Hi, I'm Perry Atkinson, General Manager here at theDove. Hey, check out our other videos and check out our website at theDove.us. Welcome to Focus Today. I'm your host, Perry Atkinson. And well, we know that the Oregon legislature has been in session, and there may be a little way halfway through this session, unless things get kicked out a little bit, and you never know. Delighted to have back with us today Scott Jorgensen. He's a legislative staffer, author, and former reporter, kind of giving us an update what's happening. He's on the Senate side of things. Scott, good to see you, friend. How you doing?
Good. Yeah, you're right. We're about halfway through at this point.
Well, boy, some interesting things. First of all, the SB 941, the complaint was the Senate went through it too fast, didn't allow enough for public hearings, got over to the House. They spent 7 hours of public input. I guess it did get through committee and probably goes to the floor. You think that's a done deal on the gun bill?
They've been trying to pass this for years. They were unable to because my boss, Senator Doug Whitsitt, was instrumental in establishing a bipartisan coalition with Democrat Betsy Johnson over in the Senate. So it was 15-15 on this particular issue over there, and they kept bringing it back session after session. But New York billionaire and former mayor Mike Bloomberg put some money into this state to help swing a couple of Senate seats, and they had the votes to get it through the Senate. They have the votes to get it through the House, and my prediction is that it will be signed into law by Governor Brown.
Amazing. All right, minimum wage. It's been kicked around as high as $15 an hour. A couple questions come out of this. You think $15 the number, or will there be a compromise of maybe $13 an hour?
I think that's possible too, because there was one point during the session where some representatives from chambers of commerce from throughout the state, including Medford, were at the Capitol, and Senate President Peter Courtney indicated to them that they probably wouldn't get $15 an hour. There was a leadership forum prior to the start of the legislative session in Portland, and Val Hoyle over in the House, one of the Democratic leaders, said that $15 an hour is unlikely, but she definitely left open the possibility of 12 or 13. There's also paperwork has been filed for an initiative petition to force the issue of $15 an hour minimum wage. So there's going to be discussions, and there's definitely a push for it one way or the other. So even if it doesn't happen legislatively, people might have to decide this at the ballot box come next November.
Wow. Yeah, I just can't imagine what that's going to do to business growth in the state, but I guess we'll have to wait and see. If it, there was also talk that it might start as low as, say, $11 an hour with increments over the next several years up to $15 an hour.
That's correct. And what you find is that they take different approaches to it. So there's been many bills submitted, some in the House, some in the Senate, and some of them identical that end up in both chambers. And that was one of the approaches, was kind of a graduated increase in the minimum wage over the next few years to where it gets phased in over time. And then another approach is to eliminate the preemptions on local municipalities being able to adopt their own higher minimum wages. And it's not like I'm unsympathetic either. Politically, it's a whole lot harder to be the person to say, look, we should think about this first and move forward. And it's a whole lot easier to be the person saying, no, I think that you guys should be getting a raise. So that's one of the dynamics here. But look, I've made minimum wage. I washed dishes at Witham Truck Stop in Medford. I think I made around minimum wage or just barely over it as a cashier at Tark's Market in Talent. So I've been there, I've done that. But it's one of those issues, and one of the things people aren't really talking about is this benefit cliffs issue, because a lot of our social assistance programs are based on federal guidelines and standards, and if you raise the minimum wage too high, then you would eliminate people's eligibility to take part in those programs. And in the meantime, you're going to see the cost of everything going up, and you might end up with a whole lot of people a whole lot worse off than they would have been otherwise.
Interesting. All right, another bill that seems to be quite disturbing, HB 2386, which deals with the labor commissioner giving them the power to cease and desist orders of businesses accused of wrongdoing. Maybe you can give us some details on that bill, but what in the world provoked it?
This is being done in the name of stopping wage theft, and there are a couple of other similar bills too. Now, originally, this had passed out of committee over on the House side and was headed for a floor vote, but they were able to get it sent back to committee, and a couple of amendments were adopted. One of them would prohibit the cease and desist orders on agricultural operations during harvest time. So I think that was a victory for the agricultural community. But even with those amendments, it's still a very bad bill. As it is right now, the labor commissioner in BOLI, they have to go through a process to do something like this, where BOLI gathers the information and then presents it to the court that has appropriate jurisdiction, and then the court decides from then. But one of the things this bill does is it replaces in statute the phrase "the court" and replaces it with labor commissioner over and over again. So it's consolidating all that power into that agency and basically making the labor commissioner judge, jury, and executioner. And there are a couple of other similar bills that were proposed too. One that would enable the labor commissioner to place a lien on the personal property of business owners based on allegations of wrongdoing. So that one made a lot of people nervous. There's another one that expanded the liability for wage claims. So it isn't just the business owner, it would be the bookkeepers, it would be supervisors. So those are some bills that people really need to keep an eye on. And 2386 is moving.
You know what's so interesting about that? You would think that that's even too much power for a Democrat. You know?
Right. Well, and it's this notion that you're innocent before proven guilty, or at least that's what it's been up until now. But this, just based on an allegation of wrongdoing, the labor commissioner would have the ability to, and there's third-party causes of actions and all sorts of other things, to where if I was a business owner and I was thinking about hiring more people, if I was thinking about moving a business to the state, I'd take a look at this kind of bill and I'd probably think twice.
Well, all right, before we run out of time, and I got a lot of other things we'll pick up on it, but for now, it looks like the education budget has passed, and yet people are saying it's not enough, and yet the taxpayers are set to receive a kicker. Where's the happy ground here?
All right. Well, what people really need to know is that prior to the start of session, a series of bills were filed both in the House and the Senate to repurpose the kicker, and with the money going towards education. So this is all a setup, and it's been very premeditated. The education budget was passed, and it was around $7.2 billion. It was universally acknowledged as being inadequate, but the difference is going to be this $350 to $400 million that otherwise would be refunded to taxpayers for the first time since, I believe, 2007. And that's the idea, is that they're going to repurpose the kicker for the sake of funding education. And it was premeditated. These bills were all filed prior to the start of session. It was similar to the minimum wage bills in that there are a lot of bills with the same outcome, but with different ways of getting there, and filed in both chambers. So people really need to look out for that as well.
Wow. How's it been with the kind of mid-course correction with the governor?
Well, it's fine now. She's facing some challenges because up until now, she has been a Portland Democrat. But we're facing situations where we have multiple counties in this state, including, some of those represented by my boss, that are in drought conditions. And so she's had to respond to that. And she's been making some appearances out in some of the more rural parts of the state. I think she's either been to Medford lately or is planning on going there sometime in the near future. So she's having to kind of reposition herself as trying to demonstrate that she's representing all of the people of this state. And she has been in statewide elected office as Secretary of State for the last several years. I think this is quite different, and then it's obviously a much higher profile position. And so she's having to do all of that. This week was huge because Tuesday was the deadline to where if your bill didn't have a work session scheduled in its chamber of origin, it's dead. And so you had a lot of bills that, you know, at the start of the session, we had this many, and a lot of that was the stuff that was filed pre-session. And then you had a few weeks to add more, and so it expanded. But now the whole scope of overall bills is becoming more limited again. So instead of having to keep an eye on this many bills, we have this many moving forward.
A couple quick questions, Scott, before I let you go. First of all, does the new governor seem to be engaged in the process? Is she walking the halls, talking to people?
Yes, as a matter of fact, some folks from Southern Oregon University were here the other day, and it was a lot of our athletic people, including members of the national champion football team. And that's my alum, you know, I'm class of 2003, so I feel a great sense of pride there. So they had the trophy, and Governor Brown was there taking pictures with the students. So she is involved in the process, but so was Kitzhaber.
Yeah.
Langoski during the 05 session, not so much, but that's a different story.
Are you guys going to get out in June, or are you going to kick the can down the road?
Well, you know, I did a radio interview with Senate President Peter Courtney a few weeks back, and he indicated that he wanted to be done at the end of June. The constitutionally mandated sine die day is July 11th, and so hopefully it doesn't go into that. But one thing Governor Brown has done is she did a State of the City address over at the Portland City Club the other day, and she said, look, I'm not letting you guys go until you pass ethics reform, which is fine. We're on board with that. But she also mentioned the transportation package. That transportation package has been dead since the passage of low carbon fuel standards, because the Republicans in the House and the Senate were very clear and adamant that if you pass low carbon fuel standards, you're going to compromise the ability for there to be a transportation package. So that might complicate our...
By the way, the low carbon fuel bill, that's the one that Sylvia Hayes' fingerprints is all over.
And that was the one that was mentioned directly and specifically in the sweeping federal subpoena of Sylvia Hayes, John Kitzhaber, a dozen different agencies, and many members of the Kitzhaber administration.
All right. Hey, Scott, thanks for your work. To your boss, the senator, thank you for his work. I love his emails. They're very informative. Thanks, my friend.
Right, and I'm glad you guys are mentioning about the Ways and Means Committee hearings being down in Southern Oregon. There's going to be one at Grants Pass High School coming up this weekend. Yeah. My boss and his wife will be there, and they've got one in Klamath Falls tonight. So I really encourage people to turn out and attend and make your voices heard at those hearings.
All right, thank you, my friend. Good to see you. All right, we'll be right back.